Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Xiu Xiu album, Nina. Any month you get to talk about Nina Simone twice on your music review vlog is a good one. Jazz singer, pianist, and songwriter Nina Simone has been getting a lot of attention over the past half a year or so, mostly because of a sample of one of her songs that landed in one of the bigger tracks off of Kanye West's latest LP, Yeezus. However, my favorite tribute to her music from this past year comes in the form of this record from art pop experimental rock outfit Xiu Xiu. With singer-songwriter and frontman Jamie Stewart masterminding the whole thing, this project has been putting out LPs for about 10 years now. And in my opinion, Nina ranks as one of this project's most ambitious albums yet. It features 11 revisions of songs that Nina had either written or just had really great performances of in her discography. And even though there are tribute albums out there already for Nina Simone's music, and there are a lot of tribute albums out there in general, I would like to think of this record as a big deal. I would like to think of it as a big undertaking for Xiu Xiu. I think the band has shown no lack of ambition with a ton of raw live instrumentation on this record backed with horns, which brings a bit of a human element into the equation, which has been sort of missing from some of the more glitchy and electronically driven albums they've been putting out recently. However, even with the effort being put into getting this live instrumentation, putting the arrangements together, Xiu Xiu has come out with a covers album that is so stylistically and just sonically off the mark, I'm not really sure I could responsibly recommend it to Nina Simone fans. And it's not really because this record isn't jazzy enough. If there's anything proven by the end of this LP, it's that Jamie Stewart and the musicians he works with on this LP have a very firm grasp of jazz instrumentation. What's probably going to be an issue is that even though this thing is a Nina Simone covers album, it sounds a lot more like the last Scott Walker album. A lot of the instrumental arrangements throughout these tracks are noisy, they're dissonant, they're cluttered. And Jamie Stewart's singing on these songs is more unorthodox than usual for a Xiu Xiu album. Whisper quiet, very breathy, hanging mostly in the lower register. And it also sounds like throughout these tracks that Stewart is in some kind of great amount of pain, most likely emotional, but I wouldn't rule out physical. What disappointed me a little at first is that Jamie's vocals are a little quiet and a little whispery, a little understated, considering that he is trying to tribute one of the best voices in jazz. He's trying to tribute a jazz great. However, what he does do, singing in the fashion that he does on this record, is captures the inherent eeriness in a lot of these Simone songs, making them way more twisted and nightmarish, especially on tracks like Pirate Jenny, where Jamie Stewart sort of takes some lyrical liberties in a story about a woman who is working on a ship and is planning to sneakily kill all the passengers when they least suspect it. And Jamie delivers this song like an evil villain, sort of unfolding his plan to a single listener in secret. It's a great track. It's one of my favorites. It's a song where I actually think the odd vocal styling plays really well into the lyrics of this Nina Simone song. However, there are some tracks here that I think maybe are a little too spooky for their own good. That spookiness that comes with the sparse instrumentation and Jamie's vocals overtakes some of the melody, or maybe what the storyline is, a lot like on the opening track here, Don't Smoke in Bed. The horns on this track do a fantastic job of very quaintly adapting the opening melody, but I feel like the singing on this song, with it being at its most whispery on this entire record possibly, doesn't really do the tale here justice. I mean, what this song is lyrically is really a lot like a letter that you find in the kitchen one morning when you wake up to see that your significant other has completely disappeared and they're leaving you. However, with the vocals being so eccentric on this record and this track, and so theatrical, it forces me to kind of imagine why they would be sung in this way, and the only scenario where that I could come up with is that this person is trying to slink away and say their final goodbye without waking their significant other up. But really, I can only guess why certain things happen and why certain things sound the way they do on this record. Outside of the moments where melodies and instrumentation very clearly mimic spots from these original Nina Simone tracks, there isn't much on this record that makes clear, obvious sense. The song Where Can I Go Without You, for example. One of my favorites on here, but still, a song with these very sparse Celeste melodies and sort of funhouse sound effects, creaking and just causing a riot in the background, against Jamie Stewart's just soft, quivering voice. This song sounds like something you would hear walking down the hallway of an insane asylum in the middle of the night, and you sort of peek into a padded room and see some straitjacket, sweaty guy singing this song to himself, rocking in a corner. A lot of the decisions made in adapting these tracks seem more personal than practical, and sometimes Xiu Xiu pushes the envelope so far that some people might think that these tracks are just too overacted, they're too freaky to be genuine or enjoyable. And I think that would be the case if you were just simply holding this record to a rock or a pop music standard. And even though those genres do inform many of Xiu Xiu's records, I think this is one of the few LPs that they've put out where that just does not cross over here. Nina scratches a whole series of different itches. This is a record for people who like their music to be very eccentric, dissonant, challenging, odd, and chaotic. If that's the case, there's no reason that a track on here like Wild as the Wind shouldn't appeal to you. I love the tension in this track, the rickety percussion just causing a riot in the background, the duet horns, and the guitar all sort of moving at this strange, fluid pace, just a cloud of instrumentation orbiting Jamie's dying breath vocals. The sound of mandolin. And what's incredibly haunting on this LP is the very steady pace of the track Don't Explain. The music sounds like the soundtrack to someone's slow, painful murder, with Jamie Stewart sounding like he has tears rolling down his face as he's singing the song. There are some moments on this LP, though, that are very visceral, like the song Sea Lion Woman, which has some very hard-hitting percussion in the background, wild horns with some wailing, screaming, free jazz embellishments, and Jamie Stewart's vocals are just hot, intense, they're loud, reaching into his upper register. I wish we saw this side of his voice more. And even though this track is in a way a highlight because of how loud it does not really make it into my favorites on here because it's a little short of breath on the length. Still, the song For Women is another very loud and intense track and is a bit longer, pays off with a really awesome chord progression at the finish with the horns resolving in a really beautiful way. And the song You'd Be So Nice as well, I feel like pushes that free jazz experimentation even further with the horns going absolutely nuts. And behind all of it, there's this really strong jazz, walking, bass line. It feels like some sort of freaky perversion of a track from the Twin Peaks soundtrack. So there are aggressive moments on this LP. There are just freaky, eccentric moments on this LP. There are sad spots here. There are creepy spots here. But there are moments here that I do think are hauntingly beautiful, are sort of soulful as well, like the opening horn melodies on the track Just Say I Love Him, which also features some very beautiful accompaniment throughout from guitar and a bit of melodica as well as they bounce back and forth with the vocals. Just as this LP is great at churning out sounds that are hugely disturbing, it's just as good as putting out sounds that are moving. Even after 40 minutes, the acoustic guitar-backed song The Other Woman sounds kind of rootsy and friendly in comparison with the other tracks here, even though this song as well is fronted by Jamie Stewart's very strange vocal stylings. I will say the only downside to this track is, while I do like the thought of what they tried to do with the tender side of this song and this record, I do think Jamie Stewart's singing style here does sound much better with heavier accompaniment. Overall, I have to say, this LP is really unique in my opinion. It's entertaining, it's strangely fun and bizarre. And with how eccentric this record is, especially in the vocal department, I do realize that this album is gonna garner some really strong opinions. People who are just far into hating it and people who are far into loving it. And those opinions might even swing further into the hating it direction simply because this thing is a Nina Simone covers album. And these covers aren't exactly complimentary in a really obvious way. But to me, after numerous listens to this album, it's very apparent that Xiu Xiu deeply appreciates and understands the emotions and the stories that are laced into every Nina Simone song, at least the ones that they covered here, as well as the instrumental quality too. And the way that the band goes about covering these songs is so incredibly interesting as well, just taking single ideas instrumentally, just sounds or chord progressions or tones, and just exaggerating them or magnifying them to the point where it feels like an entirely different song. And once you've magnified this one single piece and just brought it out and just made it bolder and weirded it up a little bit, then the entire song around this is sort of free for you to recreate. Xiu Xiu takes a ton of liberties with these Nina Simone songs. There's no denying that. But despite that, I do think that there is a ton of power and beauty to this record. I'm feeling a light 8 on this album. Transition, if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And what do you think I should review next? Let me know. Anthony Fantano, Xiu Xiu, Nina Simone, forever.